Welcome to week 5 of web design. So what are we going to be doing this week? What are our expectations? Okay, this week we're going to talk about web services and APIs. And as with all of everything with web design, this is probably one of the most important because what it allows us to do is how do we talk to other programs? Uh, we have things on the client side, we have things on the server side, and we've talked about individually how those particular pieces, the server side and the client side, what each one of them does. But we really haven't talked about how do we exchange information between that. If I have two programs that I'm working with, how do I pass information from program one to program two? That's basically going through the APIs. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And we're going to be using a concept called REST. We'll be getting deep into that. But we're going to talk about building REST applications with Express. We're going to talk about JSON, which is the common exchange of data between two programs or 2 points. And we're talking about how we consume. How do we consume an API? And whether we're consuming an API on the client side, how is it different from consuming APIs on the server side? We're going to be doing some hands-on coding, building a few routes with returning JSON. We're going to connect a front-end page to your API and have it show live data. And thinking here, we're going to recognize how APIs set the stage for integrating external services, maps, social media, and getting other features into your application that you may need to make it more user-friendly. Okay, so what is an API? Better put on my glasses so I can see. API stands for Application Program Interface. It's a set of rules and tools that allows a piece of software, aka Program 2, to communicate with another, aka Program 1. So we've got Program 1, Program 2. In simple terms, an API is a messenger that carries requests and responses between two programs or systems. Real world analogy, we talked about, remember in week 1 or 2, we talked about the restaurant waiter. Well, think of the restaurant waiter as being the API. So here, you're the user, you're making an order request. The waiter, who is the API, takes it to the kitchen, which is the server. The kitchen prepares the food, and the waiter brings it back as the response to you. Okay. So that waiter is really the application program interface. You're on your side, the kitchen's on the other side. They carry the information back and forth. Think of that as the API. So here are some use of APIs in web apps. For example, a weather website featuring forecast data. API could call a weather API, which gives the information. Mobile apps, okay, getting Google Maps is an example of that. E-commerce, PayPal, software integration. LMS connects to REST. Again, we'll get deep into REST here in a second. And then using a Twitter API. So the various APIs that are out there available that provides information, okay, that will enhance your particular application. Okay, how does it work technically? Okay, client sends a request to the API endpoint, being a URL. For example, you can do https://api.example.com. We're going to go to the user's route, and in the user's route, we're going to look at user 123 and pass back information. User processes the server processes the request, fetch data, runs logic. The API sends a response back, often in JSON format. JSON format is a field data format. So ID 123, name, Max Stedman, email, maxstedman@example.com. That is a JSON format. Field data, field data. Very simple. Or we try to keep it very simple anyway. Okay, so we're going to talk about building and consuming web services, REST APIs. Okay, so what is REST? And we use that term. Sometimes I think we use terms that basically turn out to be like aspirin. I'm not sure. Maybe some of you know that aspirin used to be a brand name. Okay, but now aspirin is a generic name. Okay. It's been used so often. It's like Google. Google it. Okay, terms become in itself a new, total different object because it's used so often. So basically, this is what we're talking about. REST. REST stands for Representational State Transfer. It is a stateless communication, which means if you use REST to go to a website or to go to the server, REST itself will not remember anything. Okay, it will not remember. You have to do special processing in order to ensure that you can stay identified or stay in a synchronous mode. So here, REST representational state for transfer, stateless communication, resource based on URLs. Here we're talking about the various routes, okay, that we can get to. Use of HTTP methods to get, post, to put, and delete. Standard responses are either JSON or XML. Extended markup language. Okay, so here, representational resource, the way data is presented. User resource might represent JSON, okay, field data, or as XML, or even as HTML. It might come back with HTML data where we modified something in HTML and we're sending it back. Okay, state refers to the data at a specific time. This is just, what does state means. This is just an example. Alice profile today, she's 25, she had her birthday, and so tomorrow you look at it, now she's 26. Okay, so what is the current state of things? Transfer, how do I move data from client to server and back again? Client requests a resource, server transfers back in its representation. Okay, representational state transfer. REST transfers representations of resources, their state between the client and the server. Example, client, we want to get user one. Okay, this is the route. The server responds with representation. It back here, not shown here, is there some actually reading of the database, get the information, and once it's read from the database, okay, the ID one named Alice, age 25, which was obtained from the database, is passed back. Client displays representation on the UI. So the client would take that information using their HTML, plug in the values that were sent in by the server, and display the information. Why does this matter? REST separates the resource itself, like the user in the database, okay, which we just talked, from its representation. We don't have to know what's happening in the back end. This makes the APIs flexible, can be used for transferring any type of information, whether that's JSON, XML, or HTML, because the API is really just a transduent, okay, basically a place that provides a service of getting information rather than being the integral part of the service itself. Summary, REST means a client asks for a resource. The server sends back a representation based on getting information from the database. And that's basically the resource's current state. Okay, another way to look at it, REST is an architectural style for building web services. It defines the rules on how the client, like the browser and the apps, and the service communicate. So it kind of puts in that protocol. Uses HTTP methods, the ones standard methods we've been talking about also master to get, to post, to put, delete, to operate on resources like users, orders, products. The core principle of REST, again, kind of rehashes the thing, is stateless. Each request from the user client must contain all the information needed. Server does not remember previous requests. Uses HTTP methods, okay. Standard data formats. Okay, consuming REST as a developer on the server side. Okay, so how do I use REST? So, okay, as a developer on the server side, you're building a REST application with Express. Here is the code, okay, that, again, not going to go through this in detail, but this is the code as far as you getting the format. Again, we're fetching users. Okay. We're doing an app get. We're going to the route of users. So we're going down to the users folder. In the users folder, there's going to be a read to the database. It gets information. We're going to take that information and put it in JSON format and send it back, okay, to the client. So, and as you're aware, I mean, just want to make sure everybody is up on this, that here, when we get to a route, there's things happening in the route, okay? We're doing work in this folder, /users. But that's kind of implied and built in and already taken care of for you, in that you don't have to know exactly what's happening in /users. But you will have, as being a developer, and you will be coding what happens in the /users route. Okay, so here's the get, the post. Again, if you need to, if you need a line-by-line description, hey, jump in the chat and it will give it to you. Okay, so again, here's the other code. This as a client, okay, consuming REST, okay, rather than as a server. Again, this is here we're fetching, okay, the users route in the users folder for information. Okay, then here there's an explanation of this, but basically what we're saying is that I might not get an immediate response, but I'm going to wait. We're going to be talking about promises later. Okay, so but this is basically the logic for us to call localhost users route, and within that route, we'll end up either getting a response from a JSON response, okay, or a data that we can put in our console. And console means we're going to display it. Okay, so again, this is just the code that, again, as an object, okay, I need to do something so I can use this object as a front end guide as to what I need to do. Okay, summary, REST stands standard way of designing APIs that use HTTP, create, read, update resources. You use REST either by building APIs on the back end with Express or consuming APIs on the front end via Fetch. Mentioned here Axios. Axios is a library used to make HTTP requests. It's another way of getting that connection between the client and the server. So here, HTTP localhost users, that tells us that we're on our computer. Axios is where to send the request to your local API endpoint. So Axios is just another way from transferring control and data from one program to another, from one system to another. Axios can be used for that. Okay, building APIs. Express simplifies the API route handling. This is just code here that what we're doing is basically getting a user ID. We're getting a user based on providing the user ID of the user. Here, just standard. Here, we're requiring to put as a component Express. Okay, this is where we're defining that, and here's where we're bringing in the JSON part of Express into the application. Here we're going to get, then going to the user's route, we're going to provide the ID, and based on that, the request and response, we're going to get JSON back with a ID and a name, a field and a name, and a field and a name. Okay, standard. Nothing really great about these particular examples other than you can expand on these as far as what you need in your application. So where we just talk about 2 fields in your application, you might have 10, depending on what you're trying, the information you're trying to get from back and forth. JSON query strings, path variables, JSON lightweight query strings can be passed back, search items, path values. Here, you're saying that we can use variables to send data back and forth. Later on, you'll see where we can store these variables, okay, both on the client side and the server side. As far as storage, where do we put them? Again, consuming APIs. Key thing here is fetch. Okay, I'm fetching with the use from the user's route. There's things going on here, and basically I'm looking for user 1. Because that's the parameter that the code in users is going to need in order to give a response, a JSON response. So, so here's the fetch. Here we talked about Axios. Here's regular JavaScript. This is Axios where I'm importing from Axios. And here, rather than a fetch, Axios uses a get. But these two basically do the same thing as far as getting information. Wrap up, REST APIs connect front end to back end. Express makes building APIs easy. JSON is a universal means for data exchange, and fetch and Axios are the means for getting that information to the client from the server. Okay, so that's basically as far as APIs. APIs is a very significant part of your web application because it allows you to exchange information. Okay? It allows you to call a specific process. So if I'm on my screen and I'm going to need to display the time of day and the date, and the time of day, and I have an API, I can call that API, get the information, call either via fetch and a get that information, bring it back, and put it in my UI. So it's kind of like the old-fashioned subroutine. Okay? The old-fashioned subroutine where the subroutine is the API. Okay? I'm using that for a service. So think of that REST, that all it is a subroutine that enables me to do a specific task for what I need to display on my website. Okay, we'll call it a day for week 5, and everyone have a good one, and we'll see you in class or on the forum board. Have a good one. Bye.